Hello everyone, it's Berk Avenue, I'm Eric. I just spent one day at Universal's Epic Universe with the goal of riding all 11 rides at least once. And I succeeded. I was technically done around 6:30 p.m., and I had no early entry, meaning I started at 9 a.m. In 9.5 hours, I got on every ride, and that means it's possible for you to do the same. But how? Let's talk about it. In this video, I will detail my whole day at the park and provide some potentially helpful tips for you. This plan is definitely not perfect. There are many variables at play when you go to this park, but I'll do my best to provide advice for your trip to Epic Universe. This is not a review of the park. Reviews of every individual ride are coming very soon though, so make sure you subscribe so you know when those videos come out. Now let's talk through my pretty productive day at Epic Universe. I arrived at the park just after 8 a.m. At that point, there were not many cars in the parking lot, so the walk from the lot to the entrance was a little more than 5 minutes. I queued up at Isle of Berk just after 8:15, and this strategy is one I recommend you follow. In terms of getting to the park early, it's a great idea. Every minute counts. By 8:30, the line outside of Berk was at least triple the length it was at 8:15. Even though you'll be out in the sun for nearly an hour, I think it's worthwhile to be at the park, and pretty much any theme park, pretty early on. It might seem like a waste of time to be there super early, but I'll put it this way. If you spend the night prior to Epic Universe at an Orlando hotel, would you rather spend the extra hour in your hotel room or at the new theme park you're spending one day at? In terms of choosing the queue up at Berk, I think that is a good strategy because those 3 rides are unlikely to have long lines at opening. Typically, the Nintendo rides get long lines from early entry alone, and when I went, people had queued up at Harry Potter before it even opened, to the point where I had a 90-minute wait at 8:15. The Isle of Berk rides are not typically open early, and when they do open, they rarely have a long wait whether they had early entry or not based on the app. Berk seems like a very good starting place to me. Maybe Darkmoor is similarly good. The lines for the 2 rides there are generally not very long at first, but Berk does have 3 rides compared to Monsters 2. So if your goal is to get on all of the rides, starting in an area with more is a convenient way to complete over a quarter of the rides very early on. So let's talk about how my Berk experience went. Isle of Berk opened at 9, and I went straight for Hiccup's Wing Gliders. This family coaster is very fun, and you can get to it by either going left or right across the bridge when you enter Berk. Left is faster, but I didn't get the memo, so I ended up going right. I was the 3rd person in the line, but the first 2 had bags and had to go to the lockers, so I was the first person on the loading platform and got a front row ride with no wait. Great start. I was off Hiccup by 9:10 a.m. Next, I did Fire Drill, the splash battle attraction. Many will probably be skipping this ride because they don't want to get wet, but if that's your concern, I must tell you that early in the morning is the best time to ride Fire Drill. The water features on this ride are almost unavoidable, but the thing that will get you the most soaked is people in other boats spraying you with their own water cannons. At the start of the day, not many people are in the line and you might be completely alone, therefore avoiding getting sprayed. You can generally just enjoy the calm boat ride with a few moments to spray you, and hit the targets that don't activate water cannons. Just exercise your best judgment when deciding that. Personally, I love Fire Drill, I think it's definitely worth the ride, and it was certainly worth the no wait I had, and I finished the ride just before 9:20. I finished out Berk after that with Dragon Racers Rally. This flat ride is known as a Gerstlauer Skyflyer, probably the least remarkable ride in the park. Many would be inclined to skip it, but if you're trying to do all 11 rides in one day, hit this one early. It's a low capacity ride, so the line will climb to 30 to 45 minutes pretty quickly. I waited around 15 minutes for this ride, and it may have been a little faster if I had chosen to do it before Fire Drill, but that was a very marginal difference. So in the end, I was finished with 3 rides after under 40 minutes of park time. Great start, and hopefully that works out for some, if not all of you. Next up, I rode Stardust Racers. The reason is that I saw the advertised 15-minute wait on a sign, and given that that was the smallest wait of the remaining rides, and it was the ride I was most excited for, I went for it. The 15-minute wait was definitely inaccurate. Maybe it updated after I had to put my phone away in the locker, but I spent around a half hour with Stardust Racers, so the wait itself was probably just around 25 minutes. Not bad at all, and I was off the ride between 10:10 and 10:15. The next area I went to was Darkmoor. It is worth noting that at this particular time of day, Minecart Madness had been closed not only for early entry, but for the entire day at this point. The waits for the Darkmoor rides were much lower than the 2 open Nintendo rides and Battle at the Ministry, and that is why I went to Darkmoor first. The first one I did there was Monsters Unchained, with an advertised 25-minute wait. I went through many rooms in this queue, but the line moved very quickly, and I was on the ride after just over 15 minutes, including the pre-show. That meant I was off the ride just before 10:40, and I had completed 5 rides in under 2 hours. Things were going great, but the next ride is where things got a little challenging. Curse of the Werewolf was the next ride on the list. This is a spinning roller coaster, and had an hour wait posted but no single rider line open. The 2 open Nintendo rides had similar or longer waits, and Minecart Madness was still closed, so I opted to stay in the same lane and just knock out Curse of the Werewolf. A few things went wrong during this experience. First off, they opened the single rider line after I'd been in line for about a half hour. I'm not sure why they opened it, and in hindsight I wish I had asked if I could get in the single rider line when I first arrived, and also ask why it opened afterwards. That might be good to know in the future. The single rider line here seemed to move pretty well, at least when there weren't too many people in line. So I think if you are a single rider or willing to do that, it is worth it on this ride if you don't see more than, I'd say, 20 people in front of you. The queue's not even that great, so you wouldn't be missing out either like you might with Monsters Unchained. So had I left the main line when I did and got on the single rider line, it's possible I would have gotten on the ride faster than I actually did, because things really went south 10 minutes later. To set the scene, picture a bit of rain. Not much, maybe not even enough that you would put up an umbrella or seek shelter. The ride ran just fine during this. Then, we had an absolute downpour for a minute or so. The ride continued to run, which made me happy because the line was moving along and I was about 10 minutes away from getting on the ride. It seemed like I would be off the ride after about 45 minutes total. Then, the lightning came. I never saw or heard it, it was not extremely close, but the lightning alert announcement came on the speaker. I was hopeful that since the announcement came 10 seconds after they sent a ride vehicle, that there was not actually lightning and the ride would continue to run. Unfortunately, that hope was wrong. The lightning was close enough for Curse of the Werewolf as well as 6 other rides in the park to close. These rides, including Werewolf, remained closed for about a half hour until the lightning cleared, and once they got the all clear at Werewolf, it took about 5 minutes before they sent the first test car to make sure everything was okay. I was surprised by that, but ultimately, there was only 5 minutes of delay the park really could have controlled, the rest of it was just weather. And unfortunately, while I do think waiting in Werewolf's line was the right call, I was not off the ride until around 12:10, making this a 90-minute ordeal, and unfortunately, drastically throwing off the pace I had been hitting attractions at. Mostly it was just bad luck with weather in this story, but every minute in this particular line just felt way longer than the rest of the minutes that preceded it. Still, I'd finished my 6th ride of the day, and headed to Super Nintendo World. At this point, Minecart Madness still had not opened at all that day, so I began with Yoshi's Adventure. It was advertised as a 50-minute wait, and it was exactly that long. However, about 20 to 30 minutes in, I ended up in some extended queue area with a bit of a view of the back of Minecart Madness, and this was where I saw the ride testing. Sure enough, it opened a few minutes later while I was still in line for Yoshi. When I got off the Yoshi ride at 1:05 PM, I immediately dashed to Minecart Madness. If you ever see the ride start testing or see it open up on the app, I highly recommend you do what I did. Minecart Madness has already been criticized heavily for its capacity, and that is a serious issue if you're trying to get on a lot of rides. This ride can't cycle through that many people per hour, so the line moves quite slowly and builds up very quickly. The moment the ride was listed as open on the app, the wait time said 50 minutes, meaning anybody who joined the line right at that moment was probably already too late to beating the crowds. I got to the ride 15 minutes after it opened, and the wait was listed as 65 minutes. The single rider line was closed on this one. This time I did ask about it, and the employees simply told us it wasn't open. It did open later on. I noticed that as I entered the main room and saw single riders, but that's not super important. The single rider line was not very active on this one, and I feel like you do just kind of have to stick out the main queue for Minecart Madness. It's not a perfect system, maybe single rider line is sometimes perfect, but one perk of the single rider line is you can still see the animatronic from it. Regardless, I was grateful to get in the line when I did, because the wait time very soon changed to 75 minutes, then 90 minutes, and once I was halfway through the queue, the wait time hit 120 minutes. Avoiding a 2-hour wait on this evidently takes some good timing and good luck. I ultimately got on the ride after just over 65 minutes, and I finished the ride at 2:15. 8 rides down, 3 to go. Next up was Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, finishing out the Nintendo Trio. The wait was listed as 75 minutes, which was great since it had been 150 minutes during the weather delay. However, I opted to try the single rider line on this one. I've heard bad things about its single rider line, but there were only 25 or so people in front of me in total. It seemed like a lot of single riders were sent through near the end of my time in the line, and as a result, I was on the ride after just 25 minutes, presumably saving nearly an hour. It is a pretty lengthy ride, so I didn't actually get to the exit until 10 minutes after that, but it was still a very good time saver if the actual wait time was even remotely accurate. To me, it seems these single rider lines are just very variable in these parks. It can have a long wait sometimes, and sometimes you can have an experience like what I had on that one. But either way, this meant that I had 2 rides left at 2:55 p.m., but the next one proved the hardest to conquer. Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry is the ride in question. The line was advertised as a 110-minute wait, and I went single rider for this one. An employee said the line would be just as long as the main one, and I was skeptical about that because the cars on Ministry seat 14 people, a very unusual number that just seemed to favor a single rider thing to me. Maybe I was just optimistic, and that did turn out to be the case because the man was right. There were probably 200 people in the single rider line ahead of me, and it took exactly 2 hours for me to get on. Maybe the main line could have been 10 minutes faster, but it didn't make a big difference. Is what I would say if I didn't get stuck on the ride. I was 20 seconds into the ride when the vehicle stopped, the screen shut off, safety mechanisms came up, and evacuation procedures kinda began. It was a very remarkable experience, no doubt, but not one that favored my goal of being able to experience every ride. Evacuation was not especially efficient. It took about 40 to 45 minutes to get off due to how many people they had to evacuate. I was back in the Paris area of the park at 5:55. So I knew Ministry wouldn't reopen for a bit, and decided to get on the last ride I had not set foot on, Constellation Carousel. I might have ridden Stardust Racers a second time, but there was another weather delay due to lightning, and the carousel was one of 3 open rides due to the weather and the Ministry closure. I got in line just after 6, and I know carousels are not the fastest loading rides, but it did take 25 minutes to get on despite there not being many people in line. The ride ran 3 cycles before me, meaning each cycle, loading and all, took 8 minutes. I was off the ride just after 6:30, and that was all well and good. So that's it. In 9.5 hours, I got on every ride at Epic Universe. I did not complete Harry Potter at this point, but I feel like it still counts. I did get on every ride in one day. But just in case you disagree, I will inform you that I did get on Battle at the Ministry later. After the carousel, I got in line for one of the other 2 open rides, Mario Kart, but it broke down while I was in line. Supposedly it was a brief delay according to the announcement, and I think the app never reported the delay, but Stardust Racers opened 10 minutes after the delay was announced, meaning for a few minutes there, I think there were only 2 open rides in the whole park. Either way, I left the Mario Kart line and got a second ride on Stardust Racers, and after that, I saw that the Ministry ride was open, so I rode it using the single attraction pass that I was given after evacuating and called it a night at 8 p.m. I spent 12 hours in the park, 11 hours of which were during the open park hours, but I did complete all 11 rides. The averaging 1 per hour thing is kind of unfortunate, but it does prove that if your goal is to ride everything at the park, and you can only spend 1 day there, that goal can be achieved. It's not a guarantee. Factors like crowds, weather, and ride breakdowns can be way better or way worse than when I went. However, I do have some advice, some of it is being reiterated, for those trying to do as many rides as they can in one day. First off, download the app. The Universal Orlando Resort app will give you pretty accurate and up-to-date wait times that you will always want to be aware of once you get off a ride and want to decide where to go next. It's free, and it's helpful, but it does eat up your phone battery, so I do recommend bringing a portable charger into the park with you. Secondly, get to the park before opening, preferably 45 minutes to an hour before opening. Doing so will save you time at the start of the day, because you won't have as many people in front of you at the first ride you go to. Third, I recommend you hit the rides at Berk first. Berk has the shortest lines in general in the morning, and you'll be able to knock out multiple rides early on, even before other lines like Stardust Racers build up. Fourth, be mindful of weather and breakdowns. If bad weather looks like it won't clear up for a while, considering leaving the outdoor queue you might be at, and heading to something that's going to be open like a dark ride or the carousel. Fifth, have a list of priorities and bear in mind that some rides may be worth skipping. It differs for everyone, but I think Dragon Racers Rally and Constellation Carousel are the least interesting rides, as they're not super different from other rides that are common at other parks. So if you want to skip 2 rides based on how unique they are, these are probably your best bet. Also, if you've been to Super Nintendo World in another park, maybe you want to skip that, but that's up for you to decide. You could also consider Fire Drill skippable, but I personally think it's awesome, so I would never skip that one. Sixth, remember that there is much to explore at the park besides the rides. If there is bad weather, or you finish riding everything in a timely manner, be sure to walk around the different worlds and enjoy the many things there are to see. I definitely didn't see nearly everything in the lands, so don't miss your chance if the worlds themselves interest you. Lastly, don't go in expecting your plan or any of my advice to work out perfectly. Bad weather could keep Berk closed at park opening like it did the day after my visit. Breakdowns can be even worse than what I experienced. It's simply impossible to guarantee getting on every ride at the park in one day. However, it is definitely possible in 11 hours, and maybe possible in 9.5. If you plan to spend one day at this park, I hope my tips help you out, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment down below any questions you have, and stay tuned for individual reviews of all 11 rides, in addition to some upcoming rankings about Epic Universe. Subscribe for those videos. I'll see you next time.